Hey again, everyone. Good to see you. The voice of college football with your stock market report for college football following Week 8 play. Fortunately, though many of you feel down and out about your favorite team, not nearly the ramifications in this stock market than the one on Wall Street that affects many of us. Feel good about this just being kind of play money. And also consider that 1 week, 1 game is not a trend. So we're talking about trends here. Sometimes they cover the trends of the last few weeks. In other cases, we're talking about years. I do have one exception to a certain extent, and I will explain. Let's start with the bull market, the high risers. And those Cincinnati Bearcats, not in the bear market, in the bull market. Cincinnati, after back-to-back 4-8 campaigns, going back to 2016 and 17, usher in Luke Fickell from Ohio State, and he has done quite the job. He's 27-5 the last 2+ seasons with bowl victories the last 2 campaigns. 5-0 this year, coming off 2 outstanding wins against 2 of the better group of 5 programs in SMU, 42-13, holding down that high-powered SMU offense, top 5 in the country at the time, to just the 13 points, a previously undefeated team. And then they just blasted Memphis on Saturday, 49-10. This is a Memphis program that was, of course, the American Conference champion and a group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six. So Cincinnati is high-flying, and the trend, it continues at 27-5. And again, they've been dominant over the better teams in the group of 5 this year. The possible hurdles coming up are Houston, UCF, and Tulsa for Luke Fickell and company. We go to the ACC for, I believe this is an under-the-radar selection right here. Is anybody noticing that Wake Forest has won 4 consecutive games? They lost their first 2 games. Clemson, of course, beats everyone, especially if you're in the ACC. And Wake lost a close game against a respectable North Carolina State team, 45-42. 4 in a row since then. 3 straight in the ACC. Their most impressive victory over a decent Virginia Tech team that was ranked 23-16. That was Wake Forest's first ranked win in forever. They also beat a Virginia team that dumped North Carolina yesterday by double digits. The Demon Deacons beat Virginia 40-23. So North Carolina and Miami are coming up on the schedule. Look out. Wake is for real at 4-2. All right, we've got a trifecta from the Big Ten. Of course, the Big Ten started play late. Therefore, they've only got 2 games in. But we've got 3 traditional underdog programs that are 2-0. Indiana, Northwestern, and Purdue. These 3 teams were combined 15-22 last season, well under 500 in the Big Ten as well. Indiana, of course, highlights the wins with the victory in improbable, miraculous fashion against Penn State, 8th-ranked Penn State at the time, 36-35 in overtime. They followed that up by not having a downer, a letdown on the road at Rutgers, a team that had beaten Michigan State and had the opportunity to make our stock market trends, but Rutgers fell to Indiana 38-21. So Indiana at 2-0, looking good. 2 wins in the Big Ten East. For Purdue, not necessarily as impressive, but an opening win without their head coach, Jeff Brom, against what is typically a solid Iowa team, a fringe top 25 team. And then Purdue beat Illinois by a touchdown yesterday. Not necessarily impressive, but they got the W, and they're 2-0. Northwestern and quarterback Peyton Ramsey, the transfer from Indiana, they're 2-0, following the big win against Maryland 43-3. And we figured Maryland was a disaster, but the Terps turned around and beat Minnesota, so this win looks a little bit better. Northwestern's biggest win, most lopsided win over a Big Ten opponent since 1970, 50 years ago, 48-0 over Illinois. All right, and then after trailing 17-0 on the road against Iowa, this is impressive. Doesn't seem like it's gaining a whole lot of attention out there, but down 17-0 to Iowa, always a contender in the Big Ten Western Division. Northwestern comes back on the road and wins 21-20 yesterday. Northwestern, Indiana, Purdue, all 2-0. And then finally, Texas A&M. They got off to a slow start. Vanderbilt has proven to be by far the worst team in the SEC. That's nothing new. and Texas A&M barely beat them at home 17-12. Then they go to Alabama, and they got destroyed 52-24. But since then, they knocked off then number 4 Florida 41-38 with a field goal at the gun. And they have disposed of Mississippi State and Arkansas as well. They are 4-1. And Kellen Mond's playing well. Isaiah Spiller is one of the best backs in college football. The schedule coming up is an interesting one in that there's not going to be a team necessarily on this slate unless it's a home situation that's going to be really favored against Texas A&M. But any of these teams could beat Texas A&M. They're not that good. South Carolina, Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, and Auburn. The LSU-Auburn stretch, obviously, typically difficult, but those teams are down. Those are the risers: Cincinnati, Wake Forest, the trifecta from the Big Ten, Indiana, Northwestern, and Purdue, and Texas A&M from the SEC. All right, on the decline in the bear market squarely is Pitt. In the pits at 3-4 after 4 consecutive losses. They started 3-0. And they were humming along playing well. Even in their first 2 losses, they played decently. They lost to North Carolina State at the wire, 30-29. They lost to BC on a missed PAT in overtime, 31-30. Excruciating. So they were 3-2. They lost to Miami without Kenny Pickett. So they lost their quarterback, Kenny Pickett, 4-year starter, 3.5-year starter. They lost to Miami. Didn't look so bad, but still lost. That's 3 straight. Then the thumping last weekend against Notre Dame at Heinz Field, 45-3. Pitt at 3-4, 4 consecutive losses, clearly on the downslide. Florida State, though, has been on the downslide for a long time. This is a proud program, of course. They've got the longest streak of top 5 finishes in the history of college football. Probably will never be duplicated in any way. 2013, they were the national champs. The next year, they went to the college football playoff undefeated. 2015 and 16, a top 10 to 15, won the Orange Bowl in 16. And then, of course, Jimbo Fisher's last year was not impressive, 7-6, 2017. But to compare that team against what's going on at Florida State now, that looked like an all-time great team. Since then, Florida State's 13-18. Florida State used to lose 18 games in like 12 years. 13-18, including losses to Miami, 52-10, and Louisville of all teams. Louisville's 2-5. They beat Florida State 48-16. I don't know if the game was that close. Florida State on the downturn for a long time now. 2017. This is a bit of a vibe pick. I think everyone will understand where I'm going on this one. Michigan. Jim Harbaugh. We don't have to document the situation. He comes in as the savior, the favored son, the quarterback, coming home, having rebuilt programs at San Diego, Stanford, the San Francisco 49ers, doing a great job and coming in with a sterling resume. He immediately upgrades recruiting. They go from 5-7 to 10-3, and they're off and running. They come within that close of a Big Ten championship and a college football playoff appearance in 2016, and since then, they have leveled off with a slight decline. 8-5 in 2017, followed by 10-3 after starting at 10-1 and looking like a college football playoff contender and the best team in the Big Ten. Then they got flattened by the Buckeyes. Same thing happened last year. Actually, they got off to a rough start, rebounded midseason, and then Alabama and Ohio State got a hold of them, 9-4. So they've settled into this 9-3 regular season. They always lose to Ohio State and the bowl game. 2016, 17, 18, 19, 4 consecutive bowl losses. So they are, whatever that adds up to, 1 forever the last 2 games of the season. They're also 1 forever, meaning 1-6 at home against their 2 chief rivals, Ohio State, which is somewhat understandable because they're elite, but Michigan State. They've only beaten Michigan State once at home, and they lost again. Rutgers beat Michigan State. Sparty turns around and beats Michigan, who had that false hope, disposing of Minnesota. Looked like an impressive win. It was a decided win, a dominant win. We'll see if Minnesota rebounds and becomes a decent team, but they look pretty bad now. So they get the big win against Minnesota on primetime, but they come back, lay an egg at home, losing to Sparty 27-24. So especially considering who they lost to. That's little brother. Mel Tucker gets his first win, and it's a big one. That's not going to help in-state recruiting. Michigan on a downslide. All right, staying in the Big Ten, you've got Minnesota and Iowa. Now I'm going to take it easy on Iowa. Two very close losses, one of them on the road. So they are 0-2, and that's not typical Iowa football. They win 8 to 10 games a year. So 0-2 is a bad start for Iowa, but they did lose close in both games. Last-minute touchdown against Purdue. They lose 24-20 on the road. Then they blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern, lose 21-20. So tough luck for Iowa. They still look like a decent Iowa team. They've got a new quarterback. Minnesota, on the other hand, got blasted by Michigan. And now we see Michigan loses to Michigan State, who lost to Rutgers. Transitive property looks awful. They lose to Michigan by 4 scores. They go to Maryland, and they would have to get healthy against Maryland, who lost to Northwestern by 40 points. Well, Minnesota gets down early. Okay, they right things. They come back. They're up 38-21 in the fourth quarter. They blow it. They blow a 17-point lead to Maryland in the fourth quarter, lose on a missed PAT. Their kicking situation, both punting and place kicking, is a disaster, and they lose. They give up 675 yards as an 18-point favorite and 216 yards rushing to the incomparable Jake Funk. Minnesota on the downturn. Iowa, to a certain extent, record-wise at 0-2. Tennessee, well, 10 quarters ago, think about this, Vols fans, college football fans, 10 quarters ago, Tennessee was feeling good. They had that long winning streak to conclude 2019. They won the bowl game over Indiana, first bowl win in a few years. Best season conclusion in forever, 2007. So they won, I think, 5 or 6 straight to conclude and finish at 8-5. Okay, they start 2-0. Nice wins against South Carolina on the road. And then they also beat, who'd they beat? Second game, South Carolina and Missouri. And that was in dominant fashion, 35-12. They led Georgia. Game 3, they're 2-0. They lead Georgia 21-17 at half. They lucked into some scores, but, hey, 21-17 against Georgia. Since then, last 10 quarters for Tennessee football, they've been outscored 109-24. Kentucky is 2-5 right now. Kentucky held them to 7 points. They don't have a quarterback, and they're on the downturn. And even though they've got a talented roster and they've recruited well, the trend's not looking good, and it may be difficult for Jeremy Pruitt to sell this program another off season to recruits. Tennessee on the downturn. Maybe the worst showing out of any of these teams. I'll say Florida State long term. I don't think it's close, but Mississippi State, oh my goodness. It seems like it was about 23 years ago that KJ Costello set the SEC passing record with 623 yards against the defending national champion. Despite the personnel losses, it looked good on paper. The defending national champions in Death Valley, 623-yard passing. And it figured Mike Leach has taken the SEC by storm. I tempered my enthusiasm. I said, wow, this looks like something here. I know LSU's not going to be as good, but still, LSU talent. Look at what Mike Leach has done in this one game. It's pretty fascinating. It didn't last at all. So you got the Mike Leach offense against LSU, 44 points, and an SEC passing record. Since then, the offense has been shut out against Kentucky and Alabama. In the day and age of passing and scoring, 2020, Mike Leach, the guru, the air raid, shut out twice in 4 games. And then the other games, they might as well have been shutouts. By the time they scored on offense, they had a pick 6. By the time they scored on offense against Texas A&M, the game was over. A meaningless touchdown against Texas A&M. They scored a couple times against Arkansas. So they've scored offensively 21 points in 4 games. That's 5 points a game. Their quarterbacks in those games, oh my goodness, their quarterbacks, Mike Leach's quarterbacks, have thrown 2 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. The stock market has nearly crashed on Pitt, Florida State, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa. They're just kind of in a holding. If you buy and sell stocks, put Iowa on hold, Mississippi State and Tennessee, and Mississippi State and Florida State almost in another category. We'll put them in the crash category. The rest just suffering in the bear market right now. My stock market watch, let me know who I missed, either on the rise or on the decline. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Like, comment, share the videos on social media. Nobody knows that probably follows you that we exist. So bring them in, college football fans that you know, acquaintances on social media. Share the videos. Let them know that we're here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. See you next time.